Good. Thank you very much. Sorry for the delay, everyone. But these things happen, so no problem, Catherine, really. Better now than later. Okay, with a little bit of that, if we could, well, I'll call the meeting to order, and if we could call the roll, please.
Mr. May,
Here.
Mr. Jordan,
Here.
Mr. Raleigh,
Here.
Mr. Ryan,
Here.
Mr. Williams,
Here.
Mrs. Irvin,
Present.
and Chairman Burtis.
Here. Thank you. So if we could have a motion or reading of the minutes of the proceedings of the previous committee unless it's waived.
So moved.
First by B. May, is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, I believe that was Jim Rowley that I heard. Second. Sorry, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 I think we can get by with that. We'll do the same for B, approval of the minutes of the proceedings of the previous committee.
Moved. Second.
There's a first by Majority Leader May, second by Legislator Rowley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then aye. All right, so presentation of resolutions in local law. We have 1A, amending the 2020 county budget to make funds available for use in connection with community engagement, probation services. Who do we have for that? I'm sorry, I can't see. Anyone here to address that?
The commissioner was on earlier.
All right.
Chairman, this is Steve Morgan. I can certainly speak to it if Phil is no longer on the call.
So hang on, Mr. Morgan. Hang on. Your audio is a little fuzzy. I don't know what's going on there, but go ahead. Why don't we try again, sir?
Is that better?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
So this resolution is to accept funds from Destiny for 2 probation officers to be on site twice a week, 4 hours a shift. So they're going to be there to provide preventive community engagement services at the mall. I think everyone's aware that this has been going on for a while now. So this is just allowing us to accept those funds to offset the cost to the county of having those officers available.
Okay. Thank you. The amount's $43,821.44. Are there any questions or comments on 1A?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just, I guess, sort of maybe a procedural question. My understanding is usually what we do is a resolution accepting the money and then a separate resolution then allocating those monies. Or this looks like it's simply a resolution to allocate the monies to a particular use. I'm not really sure why we don't have maybe a coordinating resolution to actually accept the monies from Destiny.
That's what this is doing. It's accepting the revenue and allowing us to charge the expense to the project. That's exactly what this resolution does.
Well, see, I guess I don't see it that way. I mean, usually we have resolutions that specifically says a resolution accepting monies. This is basically taking money that presumably a revenue that's already received and then appropriating that to community engagement. So it seems like this is really a resolution allocating or appropriating the monies that supposedly are already there, but they really aren't there yet. And again, Usually we have a resolution that specifically says accepting money. Like for instance, with the Friends of the Zoo, the resolution always says, amending the budget to accept monies from a particular organization.
Yeah,
Like I said,
the clause says that, Casey. We're amending the budget to accept and utilize these funds.
no, I don't agree. I mean, it's saying,
Don't agree with what-
amending
this
the
is how we
budget
accept
to
grant funds. I don't understand the question. This is typically the language we always use to accept.
well,
grant.
I disagree, but anyways, I guess it's kind of moot at this point, but I guess it's way more question for law than maybe for you. Again, this isn't really normally how it's done, at least in my experience over the last 15 years. That's usually not how we do it, but I guess it's kind of a procedural comment.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Knapp.
Yeah, so why don't we go ahead and move forward with this as presented, and then between now and session, we'll get a clarification from law, and if we need to do two separate amendments, we can certainly do that for session.
Okay, very good. Any other comments or questions about 1A? Very good. If there's nothing else, if we could call the roll, please.
Chairman Burtis,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes, but there was no motion, Chairman?
Oh, I apologize. You're right.
So
Sorry.
I'll move it, Chairman.
And I'll
Yes.
second it.
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize. Getting a little punchy here. So we have a first from Mr. Ryan, a second from Majority Leader May. Now could we call the roll? Let's start that again.
Chairman Burtis,
Yes.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Mr. Raleigh,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Irvin,
yes,
7 ayes.
Very good. Thank you. 2A, Board of Elections, amending the 2020 county budget to make grant funding available for Board of Elections expenses and authorizing the execution of agreements. Go ahead. Do we have Mr. Zarni? I know that Michelle was not going to be able to be here. She called me yesterday. She had an appointment she could not break.
This is
All right.
Candace Clemens. I'm sitting in for Michelle Sardo, and Dustin
Okay.
Zarni. Dustin Zarni is coming in right now.
Okay. We can wait a minute.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Burtis.
Thank you. We're on 2A. We're up.
Yes. So there's right. Okay. So this is additional amount of 61,000 that we got for cybersecurity from the state board. We still have not received the contract on this yet. We got notified of a pending grant from State Board of Elections, but we have not received a contract as the grant itself is still held up in the Office of Management and Budget in the Governor's office. I believe Office of Management and Budget wanted to put this in anticipation that we will have this contract and be ready to go by your July 7th meeting. And this would be money to reimburse the county for IT costs in protecting us over here at the Board of Elections and cybersecurity. I'll be honest, I don't know what it's going to entail and what's going to be covered in it because we still have not received the contract from Office of Management and Budget. They did have an overview of that it should be pretty broad in what, as long as it's time spent and money spent on improving the infrastructure over here at the Board of Elections, that we should be able to get reimbursement for the county. But, until we get the actual contract in hand, I don't have much more information.
All right. Questions or comments, I guess?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Rowley.
so I understand why we're I guess I can understand why we're doing this now. My fear is because of the fiscal situation that the state finds itself in, that this grant may or may not actually come to fruition. And I don't necessarily have a problem voting on it today, but I guess there's a question for law, maybe, if we could change this or add something to this resolution for session, that if the if the grant doesn't come through, that something along the lines that this particular resolution is null and void. I don't know. I don't know if something like that can be done.
Yeah, the one thing I will point out that this is federal money, not state money. So
Okay.
the money is coming through while the Office of Management and Budget has to sign off on the contract. This is federal money, but there could be a concern that the state will redirect whatever money it could be to state operations as opposed to local operations. And that's, that's why I hesitate on, not knowing what the contract says until it comes from the Office of Management and Budget. And as of this moment, we really don't know why the governor has held this up, other than sometimes that's just the way it is over there. But it sometimes takes forever. But I don't see any reason why, if the contract doesn't come through, that we wouldn't just notify the legislature and we would, we would never spend the money without it, without the contract.
Yeah, if I could jump in there, Chairman Burtis, Steve Morgan again.
Yes, sir. Yep.
We accept millions and millions of dollars of grants on an annual basis, and we obviously monitor and control these grants. If there's a situation where we budget for a grant through the budget process, or we're off cycle and we're accepting a grant, certainly if the revenue comes in, we don't allow that money to be spent. So we have internal controls to ensure that doesn't happen. I don't believe it's necessary to start adding language to grant resolutions that says if the money doesn't come in, the resolution's null and void. I mean, I don't think it's necessary. We have control internally of all of these grants. So the money is not spent unless there's assurances, either contracts or award letters, that money is available and able to be spent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Other questions? Yeah, other questions, comments, 2A?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Given the concerns that Dustin has expressed, and with the questions around this, maybe what we do is we consider this so that it can go forward to session if we get some clarification here on the 7th, but not take a vote.
Thank you.
And I have no reason to believe that it won't be done by the 7th. We just have not heard anything from the governor's office on this at this time.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Zarni, your point about not having the agreement either, right? This resolution is twofold: is accepting the money, but also authorizing the execution of an agreement we haven't seen yet. So that was kind of dragging me towards what the chairman was referring to. I imagine the agreement is customary, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, normally, like every other grant we've gotten from the state board, we get a contract that is signed. For some reason, this one has been held up, and again, I don't believe that it's not coming. Usually, if something like this is not coming, we know. It's just for some reason it just hasn't come out of Office of Management and Budget, and we did even have a pretty extensive WebEx on this grant and what it's going to entail. So it's a little confusing to us why it's not done.
Thank you. All right. Why don't we move on then? So that's been considered. Won't call for a vote on that. Let's move on
Thank
to
you.
3. Thank you. Appreciate it. 3A and 3B, Onondaga County Public Library. Let's take A first. Go ahead. Who's here?
Hi, folks. I'm Christian Zabriskie. I'm the Executive Director of the Onondaga County Public Library. So we're here today asking for the legislative approval to continue the lease agreements for the Syracuse Northeast Community Center and the Syracuse Model Neighborhood Facility, which is the kind of Northeast Community Center, Southwest Community Center. We have 2 small storefront libraries in place there. They do a lot of community outreach. They do a lot of workforce development, work with early childhood learning and education. They're pretty deeply embedded in the community. They give us an opportunity to reach people who aren't necessarily coming into the library all the time. And actually, they've been in place for 20 years, which is pretty remarkable. I was really impressed when I came here to first look at this library system when I first got this job about these particular locations in particular.
Great. Thank you very much. So this is 3A and 3B. These are local laws. Questions or comments? Anything at all? This is for a term of 1 year with option. Yes, just a minute. 1 year term with options to renew said lease by annual amendments for a period of 20 years. Yes, go ahead.
So Mr. Chairman, just curious, the lease amounts would, if we do renew it for optional periods, is the lease amount still the lease amount going forward, I guess? So there's no escalator for the lease amount. It's just a flat amount we're approving, and we can renew the lease up to 20 years. Is that correct? Did I ask that correctly?
Yes, I understood it correctly. Yeah.
I believe that's what we're asking. I wouldn't know the details of the legislature, unfortunately.
Steve, would you know if this has got an escalator in it, or?
Without the contract in front of me, I don't, but I could certainly get you that information, Jim.
All right, I appreciate it.
The lease does not have an escalator. We pay the same fee every year.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark, for chiming in. Appreciate that. Funding is already included in the 2020 adopted budget for these leases. Anything else? All right. Do I have a motion for
Mr. Chairman,
3A?
I move it.
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Irvin is first. Is there a second?
I'll second.
3A by legislator Ryan. Could we call the roll, please?
Chairman Burtis,
Yes.
Legislator May, Legislator May, Legislator Raleigh,
Yes.
Legislator Irvin,
Yes.
Legislator Jordan,
Yes.
Legislator Williams,
Yes.
Legislator Ryan.
Yes.
7 ayes.
7 ayes on 3A. 3B, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move it.
Mrs. Irvin is first. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Ryan is second. Could we call the roll, please?
Chairman Burtis,
Yes.
Legislator May,
Yes.
Raleigh,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Irvin.
Yes.
7 ayes.
7 ayes on 3B. Thank you. 4A, local law, talking about reapportionment, commission, redistricting. Go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. not to be repetitive here, to reiterate what we spoke of at session, but before you is the local law to amend the county charter and the code, companion code, if you will, which speaks to the reapportionment commission, and replace that and adopt a local law to initiate and put a independent citizens redistricting commission together. I'm sure there will be some, I'm hopefully have some questions. We have some dialogue on it, but I think that this is, again, speaks to good governance. I am of the opinion that the process that we have now is not transparent enough. I don't think it's I don't think it's an example of good governance, and I think following other cities that have incorporated such laws and empowered the citizens to redraw the district lines has been very successful. It's been a tremendous feedback, overwhelmingly support from the general public and the constituency when these laws have been put on the ballot box. And I think it will just lead to a better product and ultimately lead to better representation. So that's, I'd love to hear some feedback or some questions.
All right.
Not to go through the specific law, but we can.
Well, thank you.
Well, hold
Mr.
on.
Ryan.
Let me just say this though, Sue. So, and then included therein is the timeframes, how we go through it, when it's set up, the involvement, publicize it, ask for citizens' input. The comptroller publicize it. There's fail safes in there for conflicts of interest. They are chosen through members of the comptroller's office, the county clerk's office, the county executive's office. From the pool of applicants, that then gets reduced. It comes over to the legislature. The legislature has then the ability to strike one name. Then it goes back to the review panel. Then the review panel, and then they chose that review panel then chooses the 10 commissioners, and then those 10 people are then choose 7 additional commissioners, and that makes up the panel. So they have empowerment. It's a government for the people, by the people, and they put forth, and then they initiate a plan with mapping, legal advice, consistent with any voter rules, regulations, and they put forth a plan. Then they take that plan, and there's a public hearing, a lot of public hearings, both within the city of Syracuse and the county of Onondaga. Providing with enough feedback, open, transparent, all the notes, everything is going to be widely publicized, hopefully through their own website and also the county website. So there's no secrets, no backroom, just an open process. And then this process takes us all the way up to December 31st of 2002. So by the time we put the commission together, publicize it, get the commissioners, empower them, they do the work with consultation, they put forth the plan, initiate a plan, put the plan out to the general public. Our public then provides them with feedback and ultimately signs off on the plan with the districts, pursuant to the next round of census data. With that, I'll take some questions.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. So yes, this is a local law that's quite lengthy and that many of us are very interested in. And personally, I believe that we need to do some redistricting. Obviously, I was not here for any of this before. I would call it redistricting, not all these other words that have been presented to me. I have one of the strangest districts, the way it's drawn. I literally have 4 streets in the village of Manoa that I work on and work with, and so it's something that's necessary. But questions, comments on number 4A?
Mr. Chairman, I'll hop in.
Hello? Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chris, obviously, like you said, long local law. Affects not just the legislature, obviously it has a significant impact on the county executive and his department and responsibilities under the charter. Not just in the process of redistricting, but also from a financial aspect. If we pass this, he's going to have to either sign it or veto it. And then when budget time comes for next year, he's going to have to put money in the budget for this. And if he doesn't, we're going to have to put it in there again. He can veto it. So have you had any conversations with the county executive or some of his folks to get their thoughts, input, where they stand on this, et cetera?
Not any specific questions regarding the budget. General conversations, of course, with their feedback or whether they're in favor or not in favor. But I kind of wanted to, with the legislative branch in making the law, amending the charter. So I'll just say that regarding the budgetary concerns and right. So I have had some general conversations about how much potentially it might cost. But let me just say this, and I know that there's costs associated with, it's not a secret, none is a secret. That's the exact part of this is the best part about it. I'm willing to have a lot of conversations, open dialogue, but there is going to be costs associated. Some costs that we're just not going to be able to avoid, which is legal. So I know within the law, it speaks to commission staff, and I highlighted all this. It speaks to commission staff. It also speaks to reasonable and personal expenses of the commissioners. It also speaks to legal defense and outside counsel, and also speaks to widespread immediate public access to records and all other activities. But it also speaks to mapping. Some of this we would have had done already, right? So you're going to have to compile the census data. If we do nothing, the panel or the reapportionment commission, as stated within section 207, has to, well, I would hope that they would spend time legal and seek legal counsel, as well as mapping and census data. So a lot of that has to be done already. But I'm, given the tough times, I have spoken with the county comptroller's office, and to the extent that the county comptroller would be able to provide assistance and/or clerical staff, they will. I have had brief conversations with the county clerk's office. I'm hopeful that we as a body, not just as a body, I mean county government, not just the legislative branch. I think this, hopefully, my envision for this is the county legislature making a law. And then the county clerk's office, the county comptroller's office, and the county executive's office, all of which who have appointees for the review panel, are able to provide back office support in the need to save time or save money in these challenging fiscal times. Legal counsel, I've also talked to, I've had a few conversations with county legal. We have great attorneys at county legal, and they could advise this commission to the extent that they can. But beyond that, potential conflicts of interest, or they may need to go outside or will need to go on the spans of control. So just because we have some lawyers here that don't work for the county, but also are going to have to sign off because there are going to be some questions about how this might affect with the New York State Constitution and his New York State Constitution and the county charter. So that all needs to be budgeted. But I am and also with the mapping, right? There was a significant amount of money that was that was budgeted to both Austin. San Diego did this as well. San Diego, California. San Diego is a lot different. They spent a lot of money, but they were paying their commissioners. our commissioners don't get paid. I'm assuming the reasonable and personal expenses will be minimal. They were in Austin. We're doing everything we can. In addition to the mapping, we're gonna have to do the mapping again, but I would hopeful that we could have another conversation before July 7th. And SACPA they do a fantastic job. SACPA is great, and they do a lot of the mapping, and I think that us having a conversation, having them part of the conversation does that too. So with regarding to the budget question, the budget process, I will say this. I have done in the last 2 or 3 weeks, especially in the last 48 hours, really kind of rack my brain about how we can do this and make it financially possible. But at the same time, I'd also say that it's going to be a significant expense, but I don't know if we can put such an expense on good democracy, right? I think that the citizens of the county deserve to have legislative districts that are representative of good government. And, if we need to divert some appropriations and monetary appropriations to accomplish that, we need to do it. It's a bigger picture than just that. So to the extent that's my long-winded answer of going through some of the budget questions or concerns, and I know that there's concerns there, but going back to the original question, I've not had a conversation with the county executive personally, just some staff in the office.
All right, thank you. But to be clear, right now, this local law says we're hiring outside attorneys with extensive Voting Rights Act experience. I don't know that we have any of those locally. It specifically says we're hiring outside staff, not inside staff. So we have to go with what's on paper here. Any thoughts on what was the thought process behind picking the comptroller to be kind of the overseer of this? Where there's other elected officials countywide. You have obviously the county executive. You have the county clerk, who deals a lot, actually, in some of the GIS things and everything that we deal with. Any thought process there, or any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you why. So I guess whether it's a comptroller, whether it's a county comptroller or a city auditor, right? So the city of Syracuse did the city auditor. Austin, Texas was doing the city auditor too. I guess the mindset there is that the auditor does the audits. They have I guess they're a separate branch. They're there for the checks and the balances. So I figured that would just be I guess the protection that they are the independent body of both the one of the 3 branches of government, and with their expertise in accounting and auditing and independence, I thought that the comptroller's office, like a city auditor's department, would probably be the best likely department to handle that in the initial. But that's just in the initial, right? To screen through the applicants for conflicts of interest that are stated, I believe, in Section 3. But beyond that, and then definitely, and I welcome, the county clerk and I think the county clerk's office has done a great job, and they should be part of the conversation, and they will be. And I'm hopeful. I'm really, really hopeful that in an attempt to defray some of this cost, we can have somebody from the county clerk's office help. And I'll just see. So the other part too with hiring, and remember, this local law as presented, like I said before, I'm willing to take on modifications. And if we think if the question is, do we have too much invested in too much money, then outside counsel. So, but we do have very good election lawyers in town, and I'm confident, and I can't speak, nor will I speak for the county attorney. But if the county attorney is on, well, I don't want to say that, Mr. Chairman, but I'm confident that the county attorney's office says that they can do the background legal work. They can do the heavy lifting, and they can make the advisement. And I think that we have great lawyers that do election law that can help advise. But at the end, they're only going to be able to take it so far, and then they're also going to have a different set of eyes and somebody sign off on. But I want the county legal to do it so that they're already working for the county. So I've thought about that, and I had it built in that, and I actually changed that part in the beginning to do the outside counsel, limit the outside counsel's involvement.
Okay, other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, Linda,
Yes,
Um,
Mr. Urban, yes.
of course, many of you know that Mr. Ryan's been working on this for almost 3 years and went back to the table, came up with another approach to this. But the need for doing this is apparent. And at this point in time, there's no reason not to go forward with something to make certain that we have the proper approach to redistricting. And so if there are questions that can be made that he needs to change, that's fine. But I would think that this is the time for us to vote this in without any more questions.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Rowley.
Chris, when you first started talking about the law, you indicated that your reason for this was because our current process wasn't transparent enough. And then as you were explaining different parts of the law, you alluded to the fact that maybe the districts that we have right now are not representative. Is it your position that the districts we have right now are not representative of the county population?
Well, I would point to the north side of the city of Syracuse that is split up, the northern and northern west all across the northeast. It has that one part of the city that I think has 5 or 6 legislators that come in to that district. I don't think that's a good process. I know, in looking at it, I know that some of the districts that wrap around and go north, south, east, and west. Listen, I'm just going to say that I think that municipalities that have initiated independent redistricting commissions, I think that their process is better. I think when the public is engaged, I think that the process or the end product of what we accomplish is better. And listen, some districts remained, and not all of them, legislator Raleigh, some districts were changed very, very insignificantly. I don't think Casey's district changed at all. The first district changed much. I think that a lot of it was carved up in and out in the city. And I just, if you look at it, I think that some of the districts don't make a lot of sense. So again, I don't know the exact question. I think that I'm just saying, my simple statement is, I think if we could probably put forth a better product.
Yeah, again, I'm just trying to get at your interpretation of being a representative district, and it sounds like you're more concerned with the shape of the district than the actual, I guess, people that are represented. I'm just trying to get, again, I'm trying to understand why this law is here to begin with, and I just want to understand better what your motivation is. But not to beat a dead horse. I think
no, it's fine. No, it's a good question, and it deserves an answer. So I'll just give me a second. So on section 5, I think the geographics, the districts, and I think whether this is Onondaga County, or whether it's the town of Cicero, whether it's Cicero or it's a Onondaga, or it's the 12th congressional district in Wisconsin, or someone. So, I mean, listen, there's a word. It's called gerrymandering, and I'm not saying it's gerrymandering. Well, I will, right? So, but gerrymandering is a word. It's its existence and its use in the political landscape for a reason, okay? Because it happens, and I think that if there's a process and a mechanism that we could end that process, I think that we should. And I think that these districts, they're not geographically contiguous. They should be. I think some of the districts, specifically in the north side, and also towns, we'll talk about the town of DeWitt, right? They should be the local neighborhood, the community. And I think that the local neighborhoods, they shall be minimize their division to the extent possible without violating the requirements of any of the preceding subsection. Community of interest, contiguous population that share common social and economic interests. Communities of interest should not include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political landscapes. I think all that is, and that's the role of the commission to roll that out. So that's in local law B in section 5. It clearly kind of outlines what I think that we should do, and I think the current process doesn't call for that. So my answer to that would be within section 5 is what I think that we should accomplish, and I'm just saying that the process that we have now, that's not the mission.
Okay, so my last comment from me, when you use the word gerrymandering, it implies that the enrollments are out of whack, that certain districts were drawn to include more Republicans or more Democrats or more of somebody else registered in another party. And I just want to make the comment, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is 11 of the 17 districts we have right now have more Democrats than Republicans enrolled in them. And, at least in my judgment, that's more than representative, I think, of the county as a whole. So I'm not sure what you mean by gerrymandering, but I can understand from their perspective that maybe the geographic shape of a district doesn't look right. I can certainly understand that, but in a traditional definition of what gerrymandering is, overall, I don't see it. So, Mr. Chairman, that's all the comments I have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rowley.
Mr. Chairman, it's Linda.
Yes.
May I ask? Okay. It's more than that. It's the people of the county needing to have representation that they should have. And if you look at, especially the north side, anyone who lives there is confused as to who is representing them, because there's so many of us. Well, I'm not part of that district, but so many of our legislators in that area. There are people who want to have a voice into who represents them. And I think that this is the way to give them a voice as to how the districts are shaped. And that's the real impetus to doing this. And we talked about this before, about the fact that, for instance, Mr. Burgess's district, the people in Manoa should have somebody representing them that lives a little bit closer to Manoa than Mr. Burgess and has a feel for what that area needs differently. And so that's the reason for doing this. And the people have asked for this, and they're demanding this, and I think we should be responding. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to respond real quick. Thank you, Leader Irvin. I just want to say one other thing, though. I didn't, in response to Legislator Rowley, I didn't say anything about numbers or political parties. All I said was what we should be striving to accomplish is outlined in Section 5. And in my opinion, I don't think that the way in which the Reapportionment Commission set up does that. Gerrymandering is defined as a district or a set of districts with unusual boundaries that is drawn to favor one or more groups over others. And also, the secondary verb to draw a district or set of districts with unusual boundaries that favor one or more groups over others. That is the definition of gerrymandering. I think we have unusual borders. And again, neighborhood, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the neighborhood, especially, the north side, the refugee population, nobody knows who their county legislator is up there, and it's wrong. And coming into Janesville, so I just don't, the boundaries aren't right, and nothing about numbers. And I'm not accusing anybody of redrawing districts to skew numbers in one person or other. I didn't say that. I'm just saying that the boundaries aren't right, and what we did isn't right, and what we're doing isn't right. We can do better.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a final comment.
Yep.
Also remember, even above this local law or our current system with our own independent commission laid out by the charter, there are just a huge number of federal and local or federal and state laws that govern redistricting. So, you know, to speak, a lot of the similar things that you mentioned in this local law are in federal or state law. Also, our current districts, if 10 years ago, again, I wasn't here, but we went from 19 legislators to 17 legislators. And so that precipitated, I know, more significant changes than you would normally see in a typical redistricting. Last thing is with 17 districts, our base district number population-wise is 27,000 people. And the law states that every single district has to be within 5% plus or minus of 27,000 people. So, and right now all of our districts do that. And so, and that can, you know, lend to the requirement for some of the districts to maybe grab an extra election district nearby to get to the number it needs to get to in order to get to that, you know, population number. Again, my district is geographically very, very large, but because I represent small towns, and again, the law says towns, I think below 10,000 people can't be split up. So with that, that precipitates me just having a larger district. And then the last thing I'll say is, I know DeWitt's been mentioned a few times, DeWitt has 4 legislators. There's 2 ways of looking at that. One way is, yeah, there's 4 legislators, and so, you know, there's multiples. But on the other hand, that makes DeWitt probably the most powerful town in the county, because it takes 9 votes to pass something down here. They're almost halfway there with just the folks who represent DeWitt. So if they need something done, they've got a lot of horsepower down here, not just one legislator representing them. So there's different ways of looking at that. You know, it's unfortunate. You know, some people say 4 is, you know, it's confusing and all that, but on the other hand, 4 certainly gives them a lot of representation on the legislature. So lots of ways of looking at this. So, but thank you, Chris, and look forward to keeping talking about this.
Yes, others?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Jordan.
Casey Jordan. Yeah, I was a member of the legislature last time we redistricted. And, you know, I can tell you that from my recollection, you know, it's easy to say, well, geez, the districts are, you know, oftentimes or sometimes oddly shaped or whatever. It'd be simpler just to have very, you know, standard districts. But the reality is that, you know, federal and state laws severely limit what we can do in terms of drawing boundary lines. You know, you have to have roughly an equal population, a number of constituents in each district. There are a number of restrictions that are placed on us by state and federal law, which is the reason why we end up with districts shaped like we do, is to comply with those rules and regulations. You know, and it's really, in many ways, our hands are tied in terms of how we can set up the districts. And, you know, I think that a lot of the, I guess, issues or points that are raised in this proposed local law are already addressed through state and federal law in terms of, you know, splitting up neighborhoods and things of that sort. So I just don't know if the proponents are aware of that fact, or aware of all of the, you know, restrictions that are placed upon us in setting the boundary lines for districts. Again, I think that the laws that exist right now do substantially all of what is being proposed in this local law. But again, you know, I was there when this went on. I know that, you know, there wasn't an awful lot we could do in terms of changing districts or boundary lines, except for the fact that we did go from 19 to 17. So everybody's district did change, simply by virtue of the fact that the number of people in each district changed. And to respond to Mr. Ryan's comment, my district did change when we redistricted. So I guess that's just my comment on it.
Great.
Mr. Chairman Burtis, I just want to say, being a proponent, being the author of the law means I'm a proponent, but to Casey's point, we are bound legislator Jordan's point that we are bound by certain regulations. And Chairman, you are correct, Chairman Knapp, that they do have the plus or minus 5% deviation that is there. But there's also safeguards, and there is a lot that we can do within the 5%. Are they within the 5%? Answer that question is yes. But do they look like peninsulas, crustaceans, eagles taking flight, and everything else? They do, and I think that that's the thing. I think that that's wrong, and I think a commission that is led by the Citizen Commission and not taken out of the hands of those that serve is. So yeah, I'm very much aware of the federal statutes and associated with that. So indeed.
Other questions, comments?
Mr. Burtis?
Yes.
I would hope that we're looking at this in terms of long-term. We're not just talking about changing the districts that we have currently, but we want to make sure we have a commission in place that will do this the appropriate way going forward. And you know, to look at what we have currently and to think that those districts are drawn correctly would be not something that most citizens would agree with. And so therefore we want to put this in the hands of the citizens to be able to have more input into the process. And it's the right thing to do for our government as well as for the folks that we represent. And that's why we're asking that this be accepted. And certainly, if you're ready for a motion, I move that we approve this local law.
All right, thank you. Just from me for a minute, Legislator Ryan, could you talk, you mentioned SACPA. Have you talked to Dan over there as far as how they could be utilized in this policy?
I have not, Chairman Burtis, but I can tell you that I will today.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I put the motion on the floor. You have to get a second to the motion before you discuss.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you, Mrs. Urban. It was breaking up there at the end a little.
Yeah, I moved approval, and you have to get a second for that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that. Yes. So Mrs. Urban is first. Is there a second?
I second.
Vernon is a second. All right. Well, here's the thing, though. We have, if we do this, you know, we're not leaving time or any room for revision, right? Mr. Ryan was talking about being open to having some revision, and I would hope that we would be open to that. You know, we still have some other ideas, some questions, and you know, that's where, frankly, where I'm at. I was referring to the length of the law, and you know, I do believe that something needs to be done. I wasn't the fact that it's a local law, we don't necessarily need to have a vote on it, but you know, it's I don't know what Mr. Ryan's pleasure is here, but that's where I was heading. We did do a roll call, a vote on 3A, 3B. I understood that we didn't need to do that, but we did. So, yes.
Just as you mentioned earlier, my recommendation would be, since we are looking at possibly making some alterations to this between now and July 7th, I would recommend that we consider it so it can go to the July session, but that will give us some flexibility if there are changes.
But if I may, in discussion on the second, there's a motion on the floor and a second discussion topic. So if I'm, you know, the modifications, any modifications would be minor in that simply speaks to nothing more than anything that has to do with financials. So I am, like I said, I am willing to, well, this is why I wanted to have it on Ways and Means last month. But I understand that if making modifications and we make it financially easier, right? gets us to where we can come to an agreement on those, on the specific to the money issues, then I guess we can make modifications. Because I mean, I'd rather have something we can all agree on, right? I'd rather have 80% of something than 100% of nothing. So I'm willing to do that, but in taking but let me just say this procedurally. So there's a motion, a second. If we vote on it, it doesn't necessarily have to be this specific law. I can make some modifications to the law as long as it's stamped in 10 days prior to session, and the
Right.
motion still, right, okay. Correct?
Right. I mean, yeah, that's my understanding
Okay.
also. I mean, under a local law, we don't necessarily have to call a vote here. And frankly, to call a vote here, I'm not sure where everybody is at. I'm going back to 2A, I didn't, not crazy about that because we don't have the agreement. If we go back to the agenda from today, but it just is interesting, right? We brought up a few things, revision times and working with SACPA. And, frankly, I think some of us would like some more time to consider it, talk to you, and instead of sitting here and calling it, having a roll call here and, doing that and then having to basically vote it again in July when some of us might not be comfortable with some of the things that are written here. To my point, as far as Manoa goes, basically what we've got is just a crustacean or something. That's what I've got. It's very strange. I have gone, and so they do know who their legislator is there, but it just doesn't make any sense to them. And I gave up trying to make sense of it a long time ago. But basically, I go there and make myself known to those folks, and the thing is, it's just difficult. And I've been there to their parades and things, and when I first was elected, I went there, and they didn't know who I was, and I had to pretty much explain the map to them every time. So, I don't know, while it's frustrating for me as elected, I don't know if based on what I understand, I don't know if that's going to be able to be fixed. I would hope so, but based on these requirements of parameters of neighborhoods, and then these requirements for numbers, I think that I could see how that happened, even though I don't really like it at all. So, again, I wasn't going to basically, well, I was going to, and then I thought maybe we shouldn't vote on this today. So that's where I was at. Is that acceptable, Mr. Ryan, or no?
Oh, I mean, I guess that's your, Chairman, I guess that is your prerogative. There's a motion on the floor in the second. If you want to call a vote, I guess that's up to you, but if you don't, then that's okay. Listen, if you call the roll, I know which way I'm voting, so.
Well, I know. Yeah. Well, of course, Mr. Ryan, I think, what do others think? Time for revision. We've been looking at it and working on it. Obviously, I've gotten lots of emails. There's lots of folks here, and I would like some more time, be honest with you. And I'd like to hear from SACPA. I'd like to hear about possible revisions. Not here to make the author of this local law, the presenter, upset, but I did sign a fair maps, as people have reminded me, asked me to keep my word. I'm I am a man of my word, but I didn't say I would just sign off on anything. And I don't mean that in disrespectful way, but that was a very open statement that I signed, and I've already stated that I'm not thrilled with the lines drawn on mine. So if it doesn't, basically, if it doesn't disturb you too much, Mr. Ryan, I'd like to leave it where it's at. It's going to session. It's been considered here, and I think it needs more discussion, if that's okay. Hello?
Yeah, nope, again, that's, I guess that's your call.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Who's that?
Brian.
Oh, yes, B-Man, go ahead.
Thank you. You know, I must say, one of the reasons that this was referred to Ways and Means from session was to give this proposed local law due process. I realize that there's a motion and a second on the floor. I don't think I'm even remotely prepared to cast a vote at this moment. I will tell you this though. Well, first, let me just sidebar. Thank you for mentioning the pledge. I don't think you're alone in that perspective on things. But back to the issue at hand. I learned more today in this conversation than I had learned up to this point. And I had spoken with many, many constituents, people that have called, people that have written. And I learned more within this conversation than anything that's happened so far. So if we brought this to a vote now, I think we're selling short the due process that we were trying to afford Mr. Ryan in this initiative. If I have to vote, I have to vote. I'm okay with that. But I think there's a lot to talk about and a lot to think about. I learned specifics about certain concerns for the very first time. I didn't hear specifics on some of the current flaws necessarily, but it's certainly, my wheels are certainly turning on how, you know, Leader Urban mentioned that we need to think long term, and I want an opportunity to do that. I'm aware now of certain things that are of concern, specific things that are of concern. I really want to understand what opportunity within our current process, what opportunity exists within our current process to try to address that. And again, you know, if we have to vote today, we vote. That's fine. But I do think that no matter what happens, thinking long term, there's an opportunity for every member of this legislature to contribute to a process that could be better than it is today. And why sell that short? It doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
Well, and I still say basically that I would rather not vote here. I'd have, you know, we're talking about almost a month until session. There is time to work on this. It does not need to be voted on here in order to go to the floor. You know, and I don't want to be characterized by what I do or say here. I think if we have an opportunity for a better product, then I think that's what we should do. So I don't plan to call a vote today, and I would just ask for, you know, for that to be okay. And, you know, let's move forward and try to get through this. Mrs. Urban, to you specifically, I'm sorry, every once in a while, I don't know if it happens to everybody else, every once in a while, the communication breaks up a little bit. So I apologize to you. I really didn't hear you. It just kind of broke up when you were speaking. So I realize it doesn't look good, but that's what happened there. So if we could move on.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
You can't just move on without doing something with this motion that's on the floor. There's a motion and a second on the floor that we do something.
Okay. Sorry.
So unless you're asking me to withdraw my motion, you can't move forward. Is that what you're asking?
Mr. Chairman, if I can hop in, we checked with legal and the rules. The vote is up to you, even if there's a motion on the floor. If you do not intend to call for a vote, you do not have to call for a vote.
Okay, I don't have, yeah, Mrs. Irvin, I don't have legal, whatever, in my ear or in the room. If that's what they're saying, then I have support. Are you there?
Chairman Burtis,
Yes.
as the chairman of the committee, it is up to you whether or not you want to take a vote on this or not.
Oh, okay. All right. I believe that's under Robert's rules, is that right? Or just law?
No, it's not under Robert's rules.
Legislative rules.
Legislative rules. What was that, Mrs. Irvin? You totally broke up on that.
I said it's
not
not
under
under
Robert's rules.
It's not under Robert's rules. No,
Yeah,
no
all
way
right.
is it under Robert's rules, but apparently you have some different rules that we can do this.
All right, just to be clear. Okay. All right, so if we could move on then to 5A, resolution of the legislature
I'm
increasing
sorry, before we
tax.
move on, one last
Yeah.
question before we move on. So my understanding is from what you said today and everyone else has said today, that you will work with Legislator Ryan to make some modifications, that this will be on the session vote for July. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so 5A, we're talking about sales and use taxes on tangible personal property and of certain services, on occupancy of hotel rooms. Basically, this is a renewal of the 1%. This is not a new tax, but go ahead.
Correct, Chairman Burtis. This is Steve Morgan. This resolution enacts the additional 1% in sales tax that is charged in the county. The state has passed the legislation necessary for us to go forward with the final piece, which is enacting the 1%. So this will allow us to continue to charge and collect that additional 1% over the next 2 years. So the sharing formula continues to be the same as it is now. I think as everyone knows, the sharing formula was extended for another 10-year period. And the sharing aspect of that sharing agreement is the same as it was in the last year of the previous agreement, which shares the 1% at 1.58% for the county and 97.79% to the city and 0.63% to the school districts. So that's how the additional 1% is distributed. That's how it's been distributed for the last 10 years and will continue to be for the following 10 years.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Anything at all? It's all there for you in writing. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rowley's first. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Leader May. Can we call the roll, please?
Chairman Burtis,
Yes.
Legislator May,
Yes.
Raleigh,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Irvin,
Yes.
7 ayes.
Very well, thank you. If we could move on to 5B, providing for further austerity measures resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. Go ahead.
Good morning, Tim. It's Brian Donnelly. I'll be addressing 5B along with Steve Morgan. 5B is calling for additional austerity measures which would reduce the hours of the county workforce by 205,000 hours. This is a direct result of the revenue challenges that we are seeing through the COVID-19 pandemic. As we talked about last month at Ways and Means, we certainly have very significant challenges as far as sales tax is concerned related to the basic closure of the economy during this period. And we're also anticipating approximately a 20% cut in state aid coming in this year due to the financial situation that the state finds itself in. We introduced last month and asked for the legislature to approve a residential utility surcharge of 4%. That would go into place in September of 2020. It was anticipated that that would generate approximately $3.7 million of additional revenue for Onondaga County. It was tabled by the legislature, and I believe it's scheduled to be reconsidered at the next session. With that in place, and I'll turn this over to Steve Morgan in a moment, and he can run through a more detailed review of the finances and our current projections. But with the guarantee of some level of additional revenue coming in for 2020 in the fourth quarter, this reduction in staff hours, it may ultimately wind up being necessary, but we would be in a situation where we'd be able to hold on this until August. What we're looking at is certainly with the challenges that we're facing, we will need federal action. There's going to need to be direct aid to localities in order to overcome the fiscal realities that we're currently in. Right now, a bill has been passed by the House that talks about aid directly to municipalities. There are bills in the Senate that are under consideration, but they have not been acted on at this point. The concern is that if they're not acted on, we have to take action on a local level. We can't wait in the hopes that this money will come through. We're very hopeful. We are pushing for these funds to come in. If we had the residential utility surcharge, again, we could defer this to August. But without that, we would have to ask for the legislature to move on this at its July 7th session. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Morgan. He can run through some of the specific numbers.
Thanks, Brian. You know, during the last Ways and Means Committee member, I went through a projection, and since then I've spoken with most of you this week regarding the updated projections and what we're anticipating to happen for the remainder of the year. You know, the sales tax and the state aid reductions are the biggest revenue pieces that we're monitoring and tracking, and that's where our concern lies. You know, our most recent projections has various scenarios from a sales tax perspective, anywhere from a 15% reduction in sales tax to a 25% reduction in sales tax, without either measures regarding the energy sales tax and the you know, the reduction of hours in the workforce. We're looking at anywhere from a $38 million gap to a $65 million gap. Now, you know, in terms of an update, we actually received a sales tax payment late yesterday afternoon. Actually, it was a positive payment. So it was about $700,000 more than the same payment last year. It's a small payment of $5.4 million. I think there, you know, there has to be some thought to when sales tax information is communicated. There has to be some care, and we have to be smart about the information that we're distributing. Without context, I think it can be dangerous, and I think folks can potentially use that information to make some decisions without all of the information. So, you know, to provide some context around that payment, again, it was a smaller payment compared to most of the other ones. You know, the previous payment was $15.5 million. This is $5.4. the context around this payment is it's an April cleanup payment, so it's related to the month of April. And when you look at the previous payments we received regarding April, they were significantly down from 30% to 37%. So really, the context here is the the original and the initial payments for May weren't as bad as they were originally distributed, and that's really the message here. Is yeah, good news, absolutely, but I think we need to keep in mind and understand that all that is really saying is that April wasn't quite as bad as we anticipated. Still very bad. I mean, the previous payments related to April were down significantly. So we just need to keep that in mind, understand that, and as we go forward, we need to be smart and understand the information that's coming out, so we don't rush to judgment. We don't, take some actions that maybe we wouldn't have if we had all of the information, had some context around that information, and understood it. We obviously are monitoring closely every time sales tax comes in, and we look to modify our projections if we believe it makes sense, and we'll continue to do that. The last point I want to make on the sales tax front is, last week's payment, which was down $9 million, actually had a good portion of it related to May. So, and again, that payment was down $9 million, almost 37%. A good chunk of that payment related to May. So that is more forward looking than this payment we just received yesterday, which is a cleanup from April. So by no means do I believe that going forward here, we're going to be in a positive position from a sales tax perspective. But we'll continue to monitor that, and we'll continue to update the legislature as we do that and refine our projections accordingly. So with that being said, with the sales tax, again, Brian mentioned the other major revenue reduction in the form of state aid reduction. We have right now our projection uses a 20% state aid reduction, which equates to about 20 million. Our previous projection had us at 35 or around 35 million reduction from the state. We've received more information since then that is giving us, leading us to believe that reduction is going to be more in the 20% range if it comes forward. We just received some notification of state transportation money, paving money, the CHIPS money, and the Pave New York money, and that was reduced 20%. So we're getting some indication that if there's going to be a further reduction, that's what it'll be. We're already past the second measurement period that the state set forth in the budget. Please recall that the state legislature granted and gave authority to the governor to make budget modifications on the fly. And he set forth 4 measurement periods to look at their spending plan, and then to make decisions if that was going to result in modifications to their plan, particularly aids to municipalities, schools, counties, cities, so forth and so on. I believe those, obviously those measurement periods, 2 of them have passed. One was April, one was May. The governor has communicated that they did review their numbers, and they, no surprise to anybody that they're not meeting the revenue marks that they anticipated. So they intend to go forward with state aid reductions to counties, to schools, but they have not released that information or those cuts at this point. And there's been communication both publicly and information I've seen that they're waiting to see if the federal government passes some form of stimulus bill that aids localities and states before they pass those cuts down. I don't know how long the state will wait before they make a final decision and actually start enacting those cuts. But I can tell you normal reimbursements from the state have started to slow. Revenue that typically we would have received by now is not here. That tells me that they're holding these payments now until there's a final decision at the federal level, if there's going to be any help to states before they make and pass down these cuts. So those are the two obviously biggest items that we're tracking from a revenue perspective. A number of items that we've implemented to try and offset those revenue decreases we've talked about. One is the area of cost reductions. We've implemented about $25 million in austerity and spending reductions. We've talked about these previously. I'll quickly touch on them again. We've locked up about $9 million in various non-salary accounts, anywhere from supplies and materials to contract expenses to professional services, travel and training. And then we've also held all personnel vacancies and only filling absolutely critical positions. And at this point, we're looking at about a $9 million savings from that. So, you know, we've put the brakes on spending. We've locked money up. We're not hiring folks. So we're doing the things that we need to do from a spending perspective to try and get us in the best position to address this ensuing gap. You know, one of the initiatives, one of the tools we rolled out was a retirement incentive. That incentive, the date to commit to it is coming on. We have around 163 folks that have decided to take that incentive. 142 of those folks are funded through the general fund, and that's really the fund we're talking about right now. You know, so we intend to evaluate all those positions. There's obviously a cost there. We factor that into the analysis. You know, $5,000 for each of those folks, as well as accounting for some terminal leave pay that will be necessary as they exit county service. So that's on the cost side. The savings side, obviously, you know, we're going to evaluate every position and determine whether we'll be filling those positions. You know, the intent is to hold open what we can hold open, and those that we fill obviously will start at a lower salary. So we factored in about $3.5 million worth of savings for this year related to that initiative. You know, the other areas that we're looking to use to close the gap, we're still waiting for some stimulus money that was initially passed by the federal government, enhanced Medicaid money to the tune of $5 million for our county. That's incorporated in the plan. It still is in there, even though we have not seen that money. It has to flow through the state, so we continue to put pressure on the state, working with NISAC to try and you know, get the state to move and start having that money flow. Again, I think it's tied up with everything else in terms of the state's budget picture and, you know, whether they're going to get federal help or not if we see that money. But it is part of our plan. And then, you know, fund balance is also part of our plan. We're projecting to use, at this point, $15 million of fund balance. The 2019 year is over. The CAFR's done and issued. The general fund ended just shy of a $7 million surplus. That brought our fund balance to $79 million. You know, the legislature's policy goal of 10%. At this point, we're exceeding it by roughly $11 million. At this point, we're factoring in the use of $15 million of our general fund balance to address the situation. With those moving pieces, and again, without the additional revenue that would be generated from the energy surcharge and the reduction of employee hours, again, leaves our current gap projection anywhere from 38 million to 65 million. So that's my formal notes and comments. So I'll put it back to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Appreciate that. There's a lot of numbers here and a lot going on. If I could just make some comments first before I open it up to the residents and many of my friends who reached out to me and have talked to me. about this resolution and the general idea of county control and budget. I say to you, the county has done a good job in reducing expenses. You see it here on the general fund report. 9 million through austerity measures. That adds in to the total of 25 million of budget cuts. So as many residents have talked to me, do what they say, do what we're doing. We're not spending money. We're cutting back. We're taking it easy. And I would say the county has done that as well, but these are much larger numbers. And again, we're anticipating a gap of either 50 or 65 million dollars. And so appreciate the time spent to help us understand the numbers. And with that, I'll open it up to questions or comments.
Mr. Chairman, this is Casey
Yeah.
Jordan. I did have a couple of questions. I went on the comptroller's website and looked at the sales tax, well, it's actually a sales tax comparison, which goes through the end of May. And with that, I'm showing a decrease of about $5.6 million. What were I think we received 2 payments in June, if I'm correct. What were those payments and as compared to those payments in 2019?
The payment last week, Casey, was 15.5 million, compared to the same payment last year of 24.5 million. And then the payment we just got notice of yesterday was 5.4 million compared to last year's payment of 4.7. I would just caution you to the information on the controller's website is on the cash basis. We record sales tax on the accrual basis here, so they should be close, but I would just caution folks that are looking to tie any numbers from that spreadsheet out to what we're actually recording.
Yeah, I'm just trying to reconcile numbers, that's
No,
all.
sure, sure.
And then you talked about retirement, and maybe if you can clarify a little bit, because my understanding of the resolution we passed had kind of retirements phase. So it looked like depending on where a particular employee sat, the deadline for them to opt to retire changed. And I think it went pretty much almost throughout the entire year that people could still utilize the retirement incentive until roughly almost the end of the year, depending on, I think, the particular employment circumstances. So where does that stand?
So Casey, it's Brian Donnelly. The way the resolution was prepared was that if you were, when it was passed, if you were already eligible under the conditions, 55 years old, 5 years of county service minimum, that you needed to leave county payroll by June 30th. If you became eligible under those requirements in July, August, September, all the way through the end of 2020, you would need to leave county service by the end of the month in which you became eligible. The
Right.
lion's share of the individuals, though, are as of June.
Right. Okay. Do we have any idea or projection in terms of either, I guess maybe people would be eligible to utilize the benefit going forward from the end of June?
I can get that for you, Casey. I don't have the exact number, but like I said, the lion's share of the individuals of the 163 were eligible prior to June 30th, so they will be leaving the payroll as of June 30th.
Right.
There are some that are out there between July and the end of the year, but I can get that number for you.
All right.
Yeah, I could jump in there, Brian. So Casey, if you look from a salary perspective, the county executive made this incentive retroactive to, I believe, the State of the County address. So if you look at salaries that will be leaving as of each month, March is 252,000 worth of salaries. So to be clear, the number of folks associated with taking the incentive that will leave or that left at the end of March equaled 252,000. At the end of April, it was 435,000. At the end of May, it was 793,000. These aren't cumulative, or these aren't added to each other. These are separate and distinct by month. And then at the end of June, it's 6 million. So of the 9.4 million annual salaries that we're going to see leave throughout this year based on the incentive, 9.4 million, 6 million of that will occur in June. So if that gives you some context, that a vast majority of the folks that are taking advantage of it will be leaving at the end of June.
So there's roughly about 3 million potential people that could retire or utilize the benefit between end of June and the end of December.
A little less, Casey, because there were some months before June, again, that, you know, Ryan allowed for retroactivity of this. So months before, you know, there's probably, you know, there's another million or more that happened before June. So you're looking at, you know, maybe a couple million the rest of the year after June. That folks will be leaving county service.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Other
Chairman
questions?
Burtis? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Is that you, Mr. Ryan?
That is, yes. A couple questions. So I'll go back to, so Legislator Jordan asked a question about the comptroller's website on cash. I didn't quite understand that. So if I need to clarify that a little bit, because, but I guess it's a question, for both the comptroller as well as you, Steve. I said, you know, so we have budgeted, well, let me ask that first question first. So with on the website, for the comptroller's website, and the percentage, and then how is that cash? How do you, what is that? I understand that. And if Marty could answer too, and you too, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the controller's website. That's not my data. I only know what we record in terms of sales tax. That's what, you know, we actually receive the payments. We complete the cash report. We send that cash report to the controller's office for them to record it. And that's where it ends. So whatever he's reporting, I don't know what that is. I'm not involved with it.
It's the data that comes from the,
I just wanted to caution, I know Casey was looking at it, I just wanted to caution Casey and the others that there's going to be a slight difference between what I'm reporting out and if he's reporting information on a cash basis, because obviously we record sales tax on an accrual basis. Most of the times it's not a huge difference. I just wanted to make sure that folks were aware of that. And I did, you know, Casey did ask me to give him an idea where we were. I went through the most recent two payments, and cumulatively, you know, we're at about 112.6 million this year through 9 payments, compared to 127 million on a gross basis. So we're down about 14.4 million gross from a year-over-year basis through 9 payments, which is about 11.4%. So, you know, after the last week's payment, we were down 12%. So we're down a little bit less, but still, you know, obviously a significant decrease.
Mr. Ryan, if I could just follow up with the answer to your question. Thank you, Chairman Burtis, for the opportunity to participate in the meeting. Our website numbers come from Mr. Morgan's department. It's an apples to apples comparison. It does show both. I'm looking at it at the moment. It shows both the cash and accrual basis. It's on the main page of our website. The reason it's there, and I will disagree with Mr. Morgan with one of his first comments of we have to be careful with how we share the data. It's public numbers, it's public data, it's sales tax that's generated and income down in Onondaga County. And I think just the opposite, that we should be as transparent with that number as possible. I didn't make any assumptions. I didn't make any statements to say, because of one thing, we shouldn't do something else. I simply reported the facts and the data of sales tax, and I believe it should be out there publicly, and that's why it's on our website.
Yeah, I don't think I ever said that I propose not being transparent, so don't put words in my mouth, please.
Mr. Morgan, you said, and I apologize, maybe transparent wasn't a word. You said
Yeah, it wasn't a word.
You said it's dangerous to of the sharing of the numbers. What was your exact words? Thank you.
Yeah, without context. So finish the statement, please.
Oh, okay.
Be careful.
Without context.
Be careful
So
about
can I ask-
throwing accusations at people, please.
Okay,
If I can
thank you. Mr. Ryan?
follow up. Yeah, the follow-up question, because so the 37, thank you, I appreciate the info. So, and Marty, thank you. The 37%, is that, because you said 12%, but then there's also the 37% number. What was the 37? So I guess my question is, I just want a clarification, because I budget, so what we budgeted, so our sales tax projections, what we budgeted versus what we budgeted to receive versus actual year to date. Was that the 37% number or the 12?
The 37% number was the last payment we received last week, not the one we received yesterday.
Okay, thank you. All right, that was
last week's payment was down 9 million, Chris, or 37%.
okay. And so year to date, and I guess that would be, so I guess year to date.
Yeah, year to date, we're down 11.4% year over year.
Okay, so it was 12, but then we got a little bit of extra in this last April cleanup.
That's correct.
The 700 put us up to just under 12, and I think that is in question for the comptroller, and you're consistent with that too, right? So we're in agreement with 12%. We're right.
Completely
11%.
agree. Completely in agreement. Yes.
Awesome. And that second question, the 20% reduction, Steve, I just want to make sure we clarify. So that was what we're going to get the CHIPS funding, but do we know when, if we're going to collect that from the state? But we have no idea when the state might give us we don't even know what it's going to be, right?
Well, like I said, the indication, if you look at, NISAC's analysis as another source of information, they have state aid reductions anywhere from 20% to 50%. So, if you recall the last forecast we did, I had state aid reduction at 35% or about 35 million. So again, we're revising this projection almost on a daily basis as we get new information where we deem it necessary or worthy of changing that projection. NISAC has our loss anywhere from 22 million to 55 million from the state. Again, I spent a little bit of time talking about it in my intro. Your guess is as good as mine in terms of a federal stimulus bill to help states and locals. It's clear that the state is waiting on that. It's passed, the timeline has passed for him to communicate and enact cuts to locals and including counties and school districts, and he hasn't done it. So, at some point I have to imagine if nothing is flowing out of potentially flowing from the federal government, he's going to release those cuts and we'll have a better idea of what those cuts are going to be. So as soon as we know that, obviously, we will update the projection and then we'll have that much better of an idea of where we're going.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Mr. Morgan, other questions or comments?
Real quick, Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Steve, I know you guys over the next few weeks are going to be working real hard on, more clear picture of the data. Okay,
Yep.
what's really at stake. Within that process, you don't have to answer this now. It would be really important to know, and I just want to kind of give you a heads up on it because the next time we talk about this very well could be session.
Sure.
It'd be real important to know what, if any, if we mentioned this today, I apologize. What, if any, funded vacant positions are being left behind, and a little bit of an explanation of why. In other words, what's management plan on that front?
Well, I can give you a little tidbit on that now, Brian. The plan, our projection and our plan at this point, we've held vacancies across the board with very few exceptions. I don't obviously have the detailed list of vacant funded positions in front of me, but what I want to be clear about is that's been factored into our projection already, obviously. So in the $25 million reduction / freezing of expenditures, 9 million of that is related to holding vacancies. So the base projection that we start with here, before we start with our various scenarios on sales tax and other items, is $12.4 million to the good. And baked into that number is the austerity, which includes $9 million related to holding vacancies open. Certainly, as we go forward, we can provide additional detail on that as well, Brian.
Thanks, Steve. I know it's going to come up, and it's kind of a future-oriented question. So just understanding that as we go through it will be important.
Understood.
Legislator Chairman Burtis, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut off Leader May though.
No, I think you're okay. Go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Okay. So, right, with the vacant, so I would have a hard time, obviously I think we all would, having a hard time reducing our workforce to the tune of that many hours without reducing all the vacant funded positions. And I'm glad to hear that number was baked in, that it's a potential 8.977 savings there. But what about other measures that we could do and do everything that we can do possibly, and then some, before additional cuts are made beyond the retirement incentive? I mean, including, yes, inclusive, but not including but not exclusive, voluntary leaves. We could maybe do some job sharing proposals and part-time on a voluntary basis, and reduction of outside vendors. I'm assuming all this, I'm hopeful that we can have subsequent conversations, do everything we can do before we reduce this even further.
Yeah, I think everything's on the table. I mean, I think this is a multi-pronged approach, as you can tell. And we continue to evaluate the situation. Brian mentioned it earlier. Sitting around and waiting for the federal government to act is not an approach that we can move forward with. And we need to take action on the things that we have at our disposal at this point to ensure that we're prepared. Whether we receive federal stimulus or not, whether our projections are spot on or not, we need to move forward with some actions to ensure that we can balance the county's budget this year. Everything's on the table, Chris, and if things, if there's alternatives, we're willing to listen and we'll work through those.
Yeah, it's just, listen, the fact of the matter is we're in a bad spot, and I don't know if we have to, but we'll leave no rock unturned, I guess. I'm just worried. There's been a lot of reductions. Over probably 50% reduction in some of the bargaining unit workforce over the past, I think 10 or 12 years. I think one of the bargaining units had close to 4,100 people, and 12 years ago, they now have, 2,100. But so I don't know where there'll be cuts. I'll be across the board. If they are, I know that management, but it wasn't specific. But as the bargaining units have shrunk, management confidential. But this is just something that we're going to all have to talk through, and obviously these are tough decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. So we have spread we've spread cuts to not only, they're not only internal cuts so far. We have, over $4 million in contracts that we've reduced working with our partners in the community. So, we've also enacted those. So it's not just our internal spending, on employees and other expenses. So we have implemented those. We're actually, looking at those again, seeing if there's any more room there. It certainly won't fill the whole issue or solve the whole issue, but every bit matters, and that's the approach we're using. Again, it's not going to be one thing that's going to allow us to do this and allow us to be successful in managing the county's finances and ensuring that we come out of the other side of this, stable and able to provide the services to the community. I know it's public out there. We've continued to push for, actions that will allow us to balance the budget this year. So.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
Yep.
Other questions, other comments, please? Anything at all? Well, I would say that,
Mr.
yes,
Berger?
yes, Mr. Zerman.
I realize that we're in a situation, we understand the situation is fluid and something might change between now and the time that we vote on July 7th. But I would not want to commit to these layoffs until we've done everything possible. Layoffs to me at this point are a last option, and I don't think we're at the last option place. Let's look at all kinds of things that can be done, like Legislator Ryan mentioned about asking people to take voluntary layoffs, asking people to take cuts in pay. There's got to be some things we can do before we walk people out the door, and I'd like to see us do all of that before we walk anybody out the door. I was here the last time we did this. It was awful. And we're talking about people's lives and their families. I don't want us to do that until we absolutely have to.
I understand. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Irvin.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Yes, Vern.
I would say this, and I've spoken to Steve, I've spoken to Brian, I've spoken to numerous people getting research and trying to make the best decision. And I was kind of for it at first, but then as I get more research, it boils down to this. I'm not convinced that even if we raise taxes today, if we had that vote and say, hey, here's your 3.7 million, that's a drop in the bucket. Like it doesn't balance the budget by any means necessary. And then we talk about layoffs, whatever that savings is, it still doesn't balance the budget. So if the feds don't give us anything, what else are we going to do? So then we raise taxes and we lay people off, and we're still in a budget deficit. We're still in a crisis. And I'm just not willing to do that. And then I beg the notion, because I hear statements, I hear people saying it's not one or the other. Let's just be perfectly clear. I think that's disingenuous when we say that. It's not let's raise taxes and then we forego layoffs. That's not what's happening. And I think that's what's getting out to the public, like, oh, well, I'll take the tax raise if you're not going to lay me off, but that's not the case. That's not it. It still could be both. It's not one or the other. And I think we've got to be careful when we make statements like that to the public, because you get the public thinking, well, just raise the taxes and don't lay people off, but that's not the case. So I think we got to be careful when we characterize the situation as one or the other. It's not one or the other. So I just feel like it's got to be, like Leader Irvin said, there's got to be a way that, other cuts have to be taken before we go the route of laying people off. Because laying people off is final. Now we just put off a bunch of people on the unemployment line, and by the way, out the door, we just raise your taxes. I don't want to have that conversation.
Yes.
Hey, Vern.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, Vern, I hear you. But just to be clear, I don't believe that we said that here today. But I understand your message. And I would add that, March 14th, the county executive declared a state of emergency, and we've been living this life. And for me, this is a fight not to raise taxes. I don't know that we're going to win that fight. Never in my life would I think that I would have my hand in raising taxes. It's not what I came here for. But COVID has brought us to a very strange and troubling world. And we're sitting here with a budget that's just a wreck. And to me, I can't imagine that the state or the federal won't come to help us. But today we are in the dark still, back to my tunnel, analogy. And, I would, from this seat here, plead that we need help. We are in a corner on a lot of different things. And as an elected, I'm prepared to make the necessary moves, but many things I have no desire to do. But so I would call on those people to say that our need is dire and we need your help. But what else? Who else? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I would just note that, we don't really know what's going to be happening ultimately, whether we're going to get money from the federal government or what. But just kind of an off the arm calculation, if we're looking to making up 205,000 hours with roughly 2,100 people working for the county, that's about 2 hours a week that you would have to reduce, from what I can see, to make up those hours. So I certainly think if some type of workforce reduction becomes necessary, I would strongly encourage everyone involved to look at possibly a reduced work week. To work a couple hours less each week to make up the difference, to me seems like a pretty small sacrifice. Especially when you have people in the private sector who are been laid off for months. So I would just offer that observation and encourage the parties that if it's necessary to seriously consider, some type of reduced work week or voluntary furlough or something like that to avoid the necessity of actually, laying off county workers. Thank you.
Tim, if I could for a second.
Yes, go ahead.
First thing, I just want to make sure I'm clear. At no point did we say either or. What I said at the beginning was that if we could get the residential energy surcharge, it would give us a pause of 30 days before we had to look into and put in front of the legislature for a vote for the layoffs. If we don't have that guarantee of revenue coming in the fourth quarter, I think we have to act on it now. As far, Casey, as what you were saying, as far as other options, absolutely, we'll entertain any option. A furlough is subject to negotiation. It has to be something that the unions agree to. If that's something that we can work out, I think that's, again, we're not taking any option off the table. And, we're certainly willing to discuss that. We did look into a work share program. We talked to the state on that. Unfortunately, the work share program relates to a reduction in benefit because you can't get service credit in the retirement system for the days you're not physically working. So we were told by the Department of Labor that that was not a program that was viable for us.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. What else? Anything else? All right. Mrs. Irvin, were you saying to me or saying to us earlier you were not comfortable with a vote here today? It does not necessarily need to happen, but is that what you were saying?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely not comfortable with a vote today. Definitely not comfortable.
Yes, ma'am. I understand. I think that was other legislators' sentiment also. And as I said, I'm not thrilled with this, but I'm ready. So, we still have a lot of work to do. We have lots of dollars. I think we all, we all understand the numbers. And so let's just let it sit, and we will come back to it. As I said before, we have some time before session. Let's hope that we are heard and that we are able to get some help. Anything else, Mr. Ryan? No? Okay. All right, so if that's all right, let's go on to 6A. Standard workday and reporting resolution. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm standing in for the clerk of the legislature, Debbie Matero. Unfortunately, she's having some technical difficulties getting on, so she asked me just to present the standard workday and reporting resolution. This is the final round of these reports, and obviously it's housekeeping, and obviously if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them, but we've been entertaining these for the past 3-4 months.
That's right. Yeah, there shouldn't be any question. But if you want, go ahead. It's just something we've been working through. This is, I believe this is the last one. Anything at all? Can I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
Mr. Ryan's the first. I believe Mrs. Urban is second. Yes, could we call the roll, please?
Chairman Burtis,
Yes.
Legislator May, Legislator May,
Yes.
Raleigh,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
William, Williams,
Say it again.
Legislator.
Yes.
Thank you. And Leader Urban.
Yes.
7 ayes, none opposed.
Very good, thank you. If there's nothing else here, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move it.
Mrs. Urban is first. Is there a second? A second to adjourn. Who's that, Mr. Rowley?
Yep. Let's get out of here.
All right, thank you. Yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everybody. What a session. We've got lots of work to do. Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.